started them. So we have talked about the problem of evil before. Give me a second here. I'm sorry. No sooner did I do this, and I've got people coming in the call. Okay. Okay. Make sure everybody's in. All right. Well, we had definitely talked about this problem before, but I just wanted to go over some stuff tonight. It is always one of the big questions that come up when you're talking to people about our faith. It's always been one of those things that has been known as one of the defeaters to the Christian faith, trying to deal with the problem of evil. But many, many books have been written on the topic, more than enough books out there. And every worldview has to answer the problem of evil. It's not just our worldview. Okay. So don't just people don't just get off the hook like, oh, well, you Christians, you don't have a good answer for it. And it's a problem to your faith, well, they have to answer it too. So anyway, so these are some good books. I really like Clay Jones' book there. Worldviews and the Problem of Evil on the far right takes comparative religions approach, talks about how the different religions out there try to answer the problem of evil and different worldviews out there. So that's a really good book. And then the middle one, that's just a bunch of philosophers trying to propose models on how to figure it out. So anyway, if you want to go deeper, those are some good books to get. There's no doubt that Hollywood has continuously come out with movies about evil. I think I don't even need to list them all. How many books or how many movies have come out over the history of Hollywood cinema, something to do with evil, and they continue to come out, more and more and more. So Hollywood it's a fascinating topic for filmmakers to talk about, obviously dealing with some sort of evil in the movie, some sort of real demonic evil or some sort of something, maybe not even pointing in the Bible, but something evil. So there's been more than enough movies that have come out on the topic. And then there's certainly been more than enough movies that really just borrow from Christianity. Okay. All the movies, probably the top movies that have come out, most successful movies in the history of cinema, have probably borrowed from some sort of Christian idea or Christian theme. And in those movies, you always have good and evil, and someone's got to come along and put out the evil and sacrifice themselves for the whole world or the universe or whatever it is. So that is a common theme in a lot of Hollywood films. Just about all of them. It's the same repeat over and over, and really they're just borrowing a lot from our worldview or the Bible. I mean, they just do it flat out. I mean, it's always some sort of savior figure that has to come in and rescue the world from some sort of evil tyrant or someone who wants to destroy the world, right? Then they come in and sacrifice themselves. So no doubt Hollywood borrows a lot from our worldview. And my friend Frank Turek wrote a book called Hollywood Heroes, and this is what he talks about in the book. He talks about how Hollywood movies really borrow from our story. That came out a couple years ago, so you can get that. He talks about all the different movies that have come out, all the Marvel movies, a lot of the DC movies. So anyways, you're talking to somebody about God, you're not sure which what direction to take them on in the conversation. Maybe they're skeptical, whatever. You can always ask them about some of the movies they've seen, because you may want to ask them, why in the world does it seem like all the Hollywood movies just borrow from Christianity? So it's very prevalent. Okay. So there's this word we call theodicy, and a lot of deep philosophical works have tried to deal with the issue of theodicy. Jewish people had to write a lot of books on theodicy after the Holocaust. They still are writing about it. But theodicy is just an attempt to provide an explanation to the problem of evil and how to reconcile evil and suffering with an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, and omniscient God, right? And so there, how could an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient God allow these things to happen? So there's been so many books that have, so many different theodicies that have come out in attempts to fix this problem. Now, when you talk about evil, trying to define it, it's not necessarily, evil's not really a thing. We don't really, I hope we don't assume it's some sort of created thing, because that's not what it is. So it's really just a term we use that for something that deviates from the moral perfection of God. Evil is the lack of goodness, okay? And it's not like a substance or a thing out there, like evil's a thing. That's not what it is, okay? So it's a relative term used to mean anything that deviates from the will or moral perfection of God. Evil is a lack of goodness. So, if you say, well, God created all things, he's responsible for creating everything, evil is a thing, hence God created evil. That's incorrect, because evil is not a thing. Okay. Of course, we say the word evil a lot when we see something that we consider evil, because we know this is deviating from a lack of goodness. Something has been violated, a standard has been violated, and we know that it's the opposite of good, right? When we see genocides, or we see something like 9/11, right? And just our moral intuitions come out, because that's the way we're wired, that anybody with somewhat of a good functioning conscience or any kind of moral law, anyone that would have any kind of moral fabric in them would just look at certain situations and say that's just evil. And that's what we do a lot of times. We see something that is evil. And because, like I said, we know that there's a standard that's being violated. There's a standard that measures good and bad, right or wrong. And then, of course, as I've said before, talking about the moral argument, you just have to ask, so where does the standard come from that you think is being violated? Why is that evil? I mean, is there an authority that has the right to impose that standard, right, that's being violated? Where does it come from? Well, of course, we believe that God is the standard. But if God does not exist, then you could pretty much make comments like this and make comments like that. That could just be your really opinion that it's evil. If there's nothing to measure it by, no standard, right? It's just a subjective opinion. So just remember, as I said, that God did not create evil, because evil in itself does not actually exist except as the absence of goodness. Okay, that's what it is. Just like God created light, but did he also create darkness? No, because darkness in and of itself does not exist. Darkness is only a term we use to refer to the relative lack of light, right? So it's the absence of something else. Okay? Now, remember, if objective morality does not exist, the problem of evil breaks down. Like I said, if you don't think there's any kind of objective moral standard out there and you call something evil, then that's just going to be your opinion, right? That's just a preference. Okay. So when people raise the problem of evil, like last week, I had a college student complain to me why God does not stop evil in the world. Why does he allow this evil or that evil? And I said, well, what standard are you measuring God with? Is there like a standard outside God you're judging God with? Is there like a standard up here or something? Or is that just your opinion? And what standard are you appealing to say something is evil? So when people make arguments that something's evil, they're appealing, like I said, to some sort of objective morality. Okay. Now, like I said, if objective moral values exist, then God exists. Remember, objective is something that exists independently of us, right? It's not dependent on our preferences, how we feel. It doesn't start within. It's not internal. It's something that exists completely independent of us, right? But if objective moral values exist and God exists, we know evil exists, and evil is an objective or negative moral value, therefore God exists. So to measure something as evil, you need a good, you need some sort of standard, which points back to God at some point. Okay, you're going to have to get it back to some sort of something that grounds that standard that people are appealing to, right? Now, Lewis figured that out in his book Mere Christianity a long time ago, when he said that my argument against God was that the universe seemed cruel, and unjust. But he said how I got this idea of a just and unjust. A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing it to? I called it unjust. So Lewis figured out, that there's some sort of you can't get one without the other. There has to be some sort of standard in there to measure just and what's just and unjust, right? Now, Dawkins, this is what he says about evil in the world. He says there's no point to it. He says humans have always wondered about the meaning of life. Richard Dawkins is a very famous atheist. Humans have always wondered about the meaning of life. Life has no higher purpose than to perpetuate the survival of DNA. Life has no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. So that's a clear atheistic view of reality. Things just happen. There is no purpose to it. There's no design behind it, right? It just happens. We're all accidents of nature anyway, and some people are going to survive and others aren't, right? Survival of the fittest. So the question is, if evil is not something, like I said, it's not something that, God created, because it's not a thing. I already talked about that. If evil is not something God created or some force outside of God that he cannot control, then the meaning of these questions become kind of different. So any premise that requires God to have created, formed, or generate evil is nonsense. Okay, that's not, as I said, that's not going to work. Now, there's different kinds of evil when we talk about the problem of evil. There's different ways to go about the argument. There's generally been three main ones over the years. There's been the emotional problem of evil, the logical problem of evil, and the evidential problem of evil. When it comes to the emotional problem of evil, most people are not really dealing with any kind of they're not dealing with a logical problem of evil. They're dealing with something they're feeling or suffering, right, internally. So people that go through certain hardships or trials, right, certainly have wrestled with that problem. Sometimes we have to be careful how we talk to people like this that have really seen evil right in front of them, gone through evil, witnessed it firsthand, right? Because some things sometimes we like to do in Christian circles, and someone goes through something, we like to say, God has a plan, or don't worry, just pray through it, and don't worry, God has a higher purpose. And we try to just really try to fix it too fast, and that's not going to work. We just need to kind of be there for people when they're suffering, just listen to them and be a friend. Sometimes we try to fix it, and that just doesn't work. But emotional problem of evil is something that is kind of like an existential problem. How can I trust God when he allows me to suffer? How can I find meaning in my value or my suffering, right? What am I supposed to do with this? And there's plenty of people that have suffered way more in life than I'll ever see or have seen, hopefully. But I mean, I'm not asking for it, but I'm saying I'm sure we all know people that have suffered way more or experienced things that we haven't had to go through. So I can't really fully identify with some things that people have gone through because I haven't been there. So why should I try to act like I can? I can't go up to somebody who's lost a child and say, I know what you're going through. Yeah, I've been there. I haven't been there. So I can't really do that. So sometimes, the emotional problem of evil sometimes feeds into like emotional doubt. We may have doubts about God's presence, maybe wondering where he is in the midst of this suffering or evil, maybe seem like God's not answering prayer. And so, there can be a very long road trying to get through our emotional difficulties, okay? So the emotional problem of evil isn't going to be cured by necessarily reading a philosophy book or an apologetics book, okay? It's going to be dealt with through healing and help from friends and community and things like that, right? And this is why when Philip Yancey wrote these kind of books, they were really popular. Disappointment with God and Where is God When It Hurts. These books are huge selling books, and there's no doubt that plenty of Christians over the years have had disappointment with God, and they've asked the question, where is God? When the suffering's there. Now, the logical problem of evil is still something some people bring up, even though there's been a lot of responses to it. But the argument kind of goes that if God is omnipotent, meaning that he's all powerful and omniscient and all knowing and perfectly good, and if evil exists, which it does, then God, because he is omnipotent, he should be able to prevent all the evil and suffering in the world. And if he is omniscient, he knows about it, right? He knows everything. Then he should want to eliminate it or not prevent it. And, it's therefore, it seems like we could say it's logically impossible to say there's a God. If God is really all powerful, omnipotent, right? Omniscient, all knowing, and perfectly good, he would eliminate that evil, or he would at least try to stop it. Okay. If you ever saw the movie Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, since I'm kind of like a superhero movie guy, I'm getting kind of tired of him at this point. But in the movie, Lex Luthor, played by this actor, he said, if God is all powerful, he cannot be all good. And if he's all good, then he cannot be all powerful. So he's kind of was using that logical problem of evil, trying to use that in the movie. But part of the problem is that it really stems from an issue of how do you define omnipotent? Okay, we've dealt with this on campus a lot, where students assume omnipotent means God can do anything. That's not what omnipotence is. Okay. Remember, when we talk about omnipotence, we're talking about the power to effect change, to make something happen, right? And God can do whatever is possible to be done, but he cannot do anything that would violate his own nature. So technically, God can't do everything, or he can't override his nature. So omnipotent doesn't mean God can do anything necessarily. That's not what that means. Okay. For example, when we talk about God not being able to violate his own nature, we don't believe that God can lie. He obviously can't cheat, steal, can't be unjust, can't be envious, can't fail to know what is right, can't fail to do what he knows to be right. God can't, he's not able to have false beliefs about anything. He's not able to be ignorant. He's not able to be unwise. He's not able to cease to exist, and he's not able to make a mistake of any kind. So those things would violate God's nature. So God can't do everything. He's not omnipotent in that sense, right? So omnipotence just means the power to effect change. That's what that means, okay? To make something happen. So this guy named Alvin Plantinga is a well-known Christian philosopher, wrote a book a long time ago called God, Freedom, and Evil. And he tried to really take the logical problem of evil head on. He said, I'm going to try to provide a response to that. And he did a pretty good job in the area of philosophy. A lot of people kind of stopped bringing up the logical problem of evil after he wrote it. It's actually, he wrote another book called The Free Will Defense. I'm sorry, going a little faster. He wrote a book called, I think it's God and Free Will Defense, but he talked about, he says there, a world containing creatures who are significantly free and freely perform more good than evil actions is more valuable, all being else equal, than a world containing no free creatures at all. Now, God can create free creatures, but he can't cause or determine them to do only what is right. For if he does so, then they're not significantly free after all. They do not do what is right freely. So when he wrote that book, basically he was saying like a fallible person who is morally incapable of sin is a being without free will. So, you'd have to say either God can make sin impossible or he can make men free, but not both, right? So what it kind of looks like is, if God's looking at all the different worlds he could create, we call them possible worlds. There's only one that's an actual world, which is our world, right? As far as we know. And if God's looking at the different worlds, how he would do it, he knows how everything would occur in each of these possible worlds if they were actualized. Okay. Our world is certainly actualized, right? We live in an actualized world, right? But if God's looking out on these other possible worlds to create, the question is there any world he could create where he would be able to create creatures without the ability to freely choose? Okay. And make a world achievable? Could he make a world the way it should be without making creatures that are free? Now, part of being free means that we say God creates us free. He creates us it's out of his love. because love and freedom go together, right? If you allow somebody to, if you want to force somebody to go out with you or marry you, as you know, that's not love, because you're violating their freedom and you're not really loving them at all. You're violating both of those things, right? You're trying to make them marry you or make them go out with you, whatever it is, any scenario. But the point is that there's probably, what I would say is that it's probably it could be logically impossible for God to create a world where creatures are not free and that they're not there's not a world God could create without love and freedom. There's just no way he could create a world like that. Because if he determines what we're going to do ahead of time and he forces us to do it, obviously we're not free. So God may not be able to violate his nature. That's a good, maybe a possibility. It's just logically impossible to create any other kind of world than he created with ours. There is no kind of world he would create. So yeah, did God know we were going to sin? Yes. Did he know the world's going to be messed up? Yes. Did he know that Satan would create havoc? Yes. But there may be no other world he could create, okay, with a different scenario. Not we're going to create creatures, if you're going to create humans that have full freedom and do it and combine that with love, as I said, because love and freedom go together. So, is this the best possible world? Well, so, we may ask, so is permitting this evil the best of all possible worlds produce the best of all possible worlds? Okay. Their best way to produce. I think I'm repeating myself here. I'm sorry. So is permitting this evil world the best of all possible ways to produce the best of all possible worlds? There we go. So if you look at our own societies, we do know that there's a lot of risk, with our freedoms. We tell people you're welcome to drive, you can go on a boat, you can take a plane. And of course, when they do that, there's accidents and deaths sometimes. We know that, sometimes those things are going to happen, right? So, like I said, it may just be logically impossible for God to create a world without freedom and love. They can't coexist. They can't exist without each other. So, yeah, did God know it was a risk? Yeah, he did know it was a risk. I would say he does because he knows everything. But like I said, there may be no other kind of world God could create it. If he looks at all the different worlds he could create, you can't have one without creatures, without freedom and love. And let me just really quick go forward here. I'll go back to those. But if you think about it, when people complain, about God not stepping in and doing more to stop evil, not intervening, think about all the freedoms that we crave every day. I mean, we want to be free what to study in school. We want to be free who to vote for. We want to be free what to do with our bodies, full bodily autonomy. We want to be free to date and marry whom we want. We want to be free to pick a certain church. We want to be free to make choices on how to use our money. We want to be free to where we live. We want to be free to do what we want with everything. And so, we want to be free now to pick what gender we want. We want to be free to pick our own sexuality. We want to be free to make our own medical choices. We want to be free to pick a certain vocation. The list goes on and on and on. We crave freedom. So at the end of the day, we complain, but at the end of the day, God created us to be free. And with that comes some serious heartache. But I think most of us, if we really thought about it, most humans would not want to give up their freedoms. I mean, we fight for them for people, right? We fight for people to have certain freedoms as well. So, in other words, God foresaw that every world of free creatures he would ever make would have some who would freely choose to sin. So, while such a world is conceivable, God knew it was unachievable. Okay, so, if God knows human freedom will always lead to sin, then why create? Why did he create us? That if he knew human freedom will always lead to sin, you can always ask, well, do you wish God didn't create you? Okay, maybe he shouldn't have created at all. Is that what you're saying? So, as Alvin Plantinga says, God is not able to make significantly free creatures and to causally determine that they will always choose what is right and avoid what is wrong. Because as I personally believe, I'm not a determinist. I don't believe God is determining everything you do. Yes, he knows what you do, but he still gives you freedom. So I'm a compatibilist, meaning I believe God knows what you're going to do, but he also gives you the freedom to make choices. Okay. When Alvin Plantinga's book came out to respond to the logical problem of evil, a guy named J.L. Mackie, who wrote a book called The Miracle of Theism, he was a philosopher. He said, Plantinga's book, he said, in response to Plantinga's book, Mackie said, we atheists could conceive the problem of evil does not have to show that the central doctrines of atheism are logically contradictory with one another. So I don't really find that many people using the logical problem of evil too much anymore. Not too much. The evidential problem of evil still comes up sometimes, though, like where evidential arguments from evil come up. That it just seems unlikely that the world was created by an omnipotent, omniscient, holy good being. Like people look at the state of the world around them, they see things like the Holocaust, or they see other things, and they say, well, that's evidence that God doesn't exist. Okay. But that's not to be confused with the logical problem of evil. Okay. Not quite the same thing. Now, there's really three worldviews that can try to answer the problem of evil. Of course, pantheism can try it, but they kind of view evil as an illusion. Those are like Hinduism and those Near Eastern religions. And then, of course, atheists affirm evil. All they do is complain about evil, and they complain about God, right? They make moral complaints about God. I said that to someone last week. He was an atheist. He's complaining about God doesn't stop evil. And I said, well, you just have these moral complaints about God, but I'm trying to figure out where your moral standard comes from to judge God. What moral standard are you smuggling in to kind of put God on trial? And of course, in theism, which is what we believe, we affirm both God exists and evil exists as well. So there's no doubt that a lot of the evil in our world is the indirect result, or sometimes the direct result, depends. Could be direct and indirect, but some moral evil is just the result of the free choices of others, right? Some people make non-malicious choices that affect others indirectly. Sometimes people make thoughtless choices resulting in poverty and can cause starvation or malnourishment of dependence. And sometimes people make choices that really have a fallout that just impact a lot of people, right? Just really bad decisions. And we know that a lot of times, a lot of aid is given to help, a lot of money is given to help end world poverty, or given to certain countries or certain places to end horrible living situations. A lot of times corrupt governments embezzle it, right? And it doesn't get distributed correctly. Just a little side note, those that complain in the current Israeli-Palestinian debate, the Palestinians are suffering in an open-air prison. It's a terrible place. Well, they've been given hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to help Gaza. It could be, the money was given to it to make it what it needed to be a state, to let it govern itself, and to be a fully flourishing place, so they've had plenty of money. But, when you got terrorists that embezzle the money, makes it hard on the Palestinians. So I'm tired of hearing about how Israel's to blame for that when they've been given hundreds of millions of dollars to help their infrastructure, to help their economy there. And maybe they've used some of it, but a lot of it has been embezzled by those lovely terrorists, right? And they're living like millionaires. It's been documented. Now, there's no doubt that some of the evil in the world, as I said, it's self-inflicted. If you have addiction, smoking, alcohol, or the drug use, obviously that can cause harm and death to yourself and others, or overeating or bad eating habits, or lack of proper exercise, or there's all kinds of things we do to ourselves, and we can't really blame God for the things we inflict on ourselves, right? Some medical sources have argued that most major illnesses are a result of the failure of us. The problem is us. Okay. So we can't blame God for some of those things. Now, once a person accepts the idea that evil has to be possible, in order for us to have meaningful free will, the next step is often we hear to criticize God, like I said, for allowing too much evil or the wrong kinds of evil. So we often abuse the freedom, and then of course God gets the blame, as I said. Now, when it comes to like natural evil, things that are like earthquakes and other natural events, we know that those things cause a lot of suffering, right? Or the anguish of disease or something like that. When it comes to natural evil, though, we know that natural evil is the byproduct sometimes of a good process, right? We know that drowning is a byproduct of having water at our disposal to enjoy, right? Rain that nourishes the soil can also cause floods. We know the same weather systems that create tornadoes that kill humans or also create thunderstorms that provide our environment the water needed for human existence. We know the plate tectonics that kill humans and earthquakes are necessary for regulation of soils and surface temperatures needed for human existence. So sometimes that's just the byproduct of the process that is good in other ways, right? That we take advantage of. God may possibly allow some of those natural disasters to he may allow them to allow people to seek him for the first time. It could be a time where a huge natural disaster happens where people really get like a wake-up call and they start to think about God. Now, I'm not saying for sure that's why God allows them, but we do know that in the midst of natural disaster that sometimes humanity's best comes out because we try to help each other, but also it may cause people to respond in love and compassion. Like I just said, people sometimes it brings out the best of people, and other times it causes people to seek him for the first time. Of course, natural disasters also happen because the creation is off. As we know in Romans 8, the creation is not what it should be. It's all out of order. Some goods are impossible without coexisting evils, of course. For example, one can't exercise compassion unless suffering exists, heroism unless danger exists, and mercy unless sin exists. So God would not eliminate an evil if eliminating also eliminates even a greater good. Now, I don't really know. I'm not smart enough because I'm not omniscient. I'm not God to look at a certain situation and know that if there's a greater good here. Like if someone says to me, why is this happening? I can't really say to them in all honesty, well, there must be a greater good here. I just don't see it. That could be the case. God sees something that they don't see, and obviously they're not seeing it right now. Maybe that greater good shows up later. The good that comes out of a situation comes up later, and they look back and go, wow, now I see why that happened. But who knows? But there obviously some things come out much later. The evidence comes out later. There was a greater good in some situations, right? And we just couldn't see it at the present time. Now, why doesn't God intervene and stop all evil? Well, God could compensate for people's evil actions through supernatural intervention 100% of the time, right? He could, I bring this illustration with college students. If you go out to the bar tonight and someone's walking out of the bar and God knows they're going to be a drunk driver and they're going to kill somebody, let's say God causes that person to trip over their shoe and they fall down, pass out, or else a friend comes up to them and grabs their keys and doesn't allow them to drive. Let's just say God intervenes in that one incident where a drunk driver is going to harm somebody else. Well, then you might ask, well, wait, he did it with that one drunk driver that night. What about the other 20 drunk drivers that are about to go out in their cars and hurt somebody? So should God, intervene and stop all them? Should he stop all the drunk drivers that night? Is he obligated to stop the 50 or just the one or the 20 and not the 30 more? I mean, so yeah, God could do that. He can intervene anytime he wants, but obviously it doesn't seem like that's a reality, right? That you could go on all kinds of lists where God would, if God would just intervene. And I agree that sometimes I look at certain situations and I want God to intervene and I want God to do something. I don't understand why he didn't step in over here or there. But at the end of the day, I don't know, why we're not in any what we call epistemic situation where we could know why God allows. He has may have a reason that we can't see. He's allowing that to happen. But we're not. The first thing we don't want to do is just guess. Well, this is why this is happening. We just don't know. So God probably does intervene more than we think in certain situations, but he certainly isn't going to intervene in every situation all day long because people make some of the dumbest choices on a daily basis. They're constantly doing sinful things, as we know. Um, all kinds of bad choices. God would be intervening all day long, not 24 hours a day to stop our stupid decisions. It wouldn't lead to any more responsibility, more accountability, wouldn't lead to any change. But sometimes God will intervene when we make bad decisions. Other times he may let us just find out the hard way. So it just depends on the situation. Okay. But like I said, if you want God, like I said before, if you want God to stop certain evils in the world, you may want to ask yourself, or if somebody brings it up, why should God step in and stop the evil they do? Because everybody does evil. So you may want to ask the person, what if God intervened into your life and stopped the evil you did? Would you like him interfering with the things you do? Now, another choice would be for God to judge and remove those who commit evil acts, of course, right? Can God just remove them? Well, if he did that, there'd probably be no one left because everybody sins, as the Bible says. Um, so God chooses to leave us, a lot of us here, and he does observe the evil around us, which he's not happy with. Now, one thing that's come out over the last 20 to 30 years is a different view on the problem of evil. There's something, it's been put forth by a theologian named Gregory Boyd, who I don't agree with him on everything, but he does have some interesting points in his books on the evil in the world, like why so much evil and what's going on. And he basically says that a lot of Christians do not have a warfare worldview. And what he means by that is that at the time of Jesus and all those Jews that are around him at the time in the first century, they had a warfare worldview, meaning that they believed they were locked in they were part of this cosmic conflict, this invisible conflict all around them. Okay, there's the kingdom of darkness and the kingdom of light. Satan's kingdom is the kingdom of darkness. People are caught in the kingdom of darkness. And then, of course, you have the kingdom of light. And then Jesus does these healings, does all these things in his ministry, healing the lepers, casting out demons, all these things Jesus is doing to reverse the kingdom of darkness. Jesus is bringing the kingdom of God and the kingdom of light into the world. And Jesus is proving that by doing these healings and exorcisms and intervening and really pushing back the evil in the world. And so that was the worldview that they had. And Boyd thinks that sometimes maybe we have more of a blueprint theology where some of us just, assume that, the things that God directly causes everything. Like if everything that happens, every evil God had, like if something happens, your friend, I don't want, God, I don't want this to happen, but say your friend gets in a car accident tomorrow and dies, you think like God pushed the button in the morning, like his finger went like that, and he already set that in motion. He wanted, he knew this is going to happen, and he's just, it's almost like he had a blueprint set up for this to happen. So versus maybe another view is that this just happens because it's part of the fallen world we live in, and car accidents are going to happen, and some terrible things are going to happen because of the world we live in. It's not just like God like pushing it along, like he started it off with his finger, like, you know what I mean? Like he ordained the whole thing and he said, okay, I've already set this up and it's going to happen today. Boom, person's dead. So that's just a different view. But he doesn't, he says that some of these terrible things in the world are not necessarily best explained by some certain providential purpose of God. That God, we don't have to always look that God has some perfect ultimate reason for it. Okay. What Boyd thinks also, one of the reasons a lot of these things happen in the world are because of satanic influence. Okay, that there is a demonic war going on. And just like in the first century, that the good and bad were in conflict, and everybody was aware of it. Of course, Paul talks about this in Ephesians 6. But God allowed, for some reason, he decided to allow Satan, when he not only created the world, he built so much freedom into the creation for humans. He built a ton of freedom into the creation for Satan to do a lot of to create a lot of havoc, or to cause a lot of havoc. And because of that, there is a war going on around us. Now, it doesn't mean God is fighting Satan all day long, like they're duking out like in the boxing, like Rocky, but it means that God has allowed this to happen. By the way, it's a really good book if you want to critique. See Greg Boyd's view in there, then the critique of his view by some other people, but it's kind of like a four view of spiritual warfare book. Four views, there's so many four views books. So let me mention also something about in the Bible, about the existence or the reality of evil in the Bible, and people that really understood in the Bible the painful reality of the existence of evil and suffering. I mean, really, it's not an abstract idea. Evil is not an abstract idea. It's a real thing that's going on around them. Look at some of these passages. Habakkuk, chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? I'll cry out to you violence, but you do not save. Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore, the law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so the justice is perverted. So, I feel like sometimes I look around the world today. I don't know about you guys, but that's kind of like the way I feel. I mean, the things we see, just the depravity of man and what we're seeing in the world is just, you just want to say, God, where are you? Sometimes, I mean, it is just, it's unbearable. Now, of course, we know that God is there. He's not like he doesn't know what's going on, but we just want to see him do something about some of these things, right? Look at Ecclesiastes chapter 4, 1 to 3. Again, I looked and saw all the oppression was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed. And they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. And I declared that the dead who already died are happier than the living who are still alive, but better than both is the one who's ever been born, who has not seen the evil that is done under the sun. And of course, we have the psalmists. There's a lot of psalms like this one. Lord, why do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? You have a lot of psalms, and I don't have time to read the whole chapter, so I'm not trying to necessarily take everything out of context. But the point is that you have a lot of passages where the psalmist is like saying, God seems hidden. Like, God, where are you? Seems like you're hiding. Why are you not closer here? Where are you? And then other passages say God seeks out people, so of course you have the Psalm 22 text that Jesus ends up quoting. Originally it was David, who wrote that in Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me? I look at this evil around me. It seems like you're not there. And then Psalm 82, 83, 1 to 2 is another one. Oh God, do not remain silent. Do not turn a deaf ear. Do not stand aloof, oh God. See how your enemies growl, how your foes rear their heads. And so you can just go through the Psalms and some of these other passages and see that the biblical writers were acutely aware of evil. They understood it. It wasn't just an abstract thing. And a lot of them call out to God. A lot of them like, where are you, God? I mean, why are you not doing something here? Right. And that's where a lot of us are today, because we look at the state of the world, and while we've always had evil, it just, I would have never imagined the last 10 years I'd see people, or last 5 years, just suddenly saying, we don't know what a man is. We don't know what a woman is. Gender is whatever you want it to be. I never thought, in the last 5 years, now we see people fighting like crazy to see the unborn killed, all the way up through birth all the way up through the birth of the child itself. We see people fighting for that left and right to kill innocent human beings. We see people calling out the extermination of a certain people group, and celebrating it. Um, the depravity of man is just it's discouraging, right? But we know biblically that God does not look at them first. God will deal with them, but you know what? Peter says he judges the household of God first. He looks to us first, and he looks to his children, and he technically brings judgment to us first. He'll deal with them. Paul says, "Let God judge the outsider." He will deal with them, but it's still painful for us to watch some of these things. It's quite depressing at times, right? Now, also, it's hard to have an eternal perspective at times, right? When Paul talks about the momentary light affliction that he has, the misery he is having in the midst of those horrific experiences of momentary light affliction, it's something that enables Paul to see, there's an eternal weight, eternal glory beyond all this, right? So the evil that Paul endures in this life is nothing that will compare to the eternity in front of him. And sometimes it's hard for us to have an eternal perspective where we're looking at the now. We're just absolutely immersed in the now. We're not thinking long term, right? Or eternally. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge for all of us. For me, I mean, sometimes we just don't have a good view. It's hard for us to think in the future. It's hard when we're caught up in the present with all the horrific issues around us, right? And Bonhoeffer, is interesting that if you don't know who Dietrich Bonhoeffer was, he was the German theologian, Lutheran theologian who came to the U.S. to teach at a seminary here, had a really good situation here, good job. He was engaged. But then he realized that he needed to go back to Germany and try to stop Hitler. And he wasn't going to stay in the U.S. and have a comfortable life. He was determined to go back to Germany and come up with a plot to stop Hitler. And of course, he was stopped and he got executed. He wrote the book called The Cost of Discipleship. If you never read it, you should get it. But on the last day of his imprisonment, he actually gave a message on Isaiah 53 for his fellow inmates. You know what he said before he was taken away for his execution? He said, "This is the end, but for me it is the beginning of life." He says, "This is the end, but for me it is the beginning of life," right? So obviously he was able to have that eternal perspective. And it is true that it's hard to see this right now, and I'm not trying to downplay it, but no amount of evil, pain, or suffering in a human lifetime will overwhelm us if it's compared to endless paradise, right? I mean, if we experience evil for 50 years, how will that compare if you've lived for 5,000 years without a single tear, eternity without a single tear, right? And without a single tear. So obviously right now is a blip on the screen compared to what's coming our way, with a eternity in front of us. And that doesn't take away the pain, or it takes away the hardship, and doesn't take away the current suffering. But sometimes, when we really think about our faith and our Christian faith, eternal life, sometimes, it has hit us like, wow, this is just a temporary compared to what's going to be. I'm going to be eternity with God, and then he's going to come back to earth and Jesus and all this stuff. It's like trying to live with an eternal perspective, right? So, no, evil definitely is all around us. There's different kinds of ways to phrase the problem of evil. Like I said, there's the emotional problem of evil, there's the logical problem of evil, there's the evidential problem of evil. And I think for me personally, I see a lot of people that struggle with the emotional problem of evil when they've seen something in their life or they've gone through something. And that just takes for listeners and friends and people around them to help them. I mean, you can't give someone just a philosophy book on that, right? But when you get into areas like philosophy, religion, that's an academic discipline. They write a lot of books on this stuff, the problem of evil, and try to come up with theodicies and how to respond to these things. there's been more than enough books written about these issues. So that's a kind of a short talk tonight. I don't really have any more, but we can maybe talk here a little bit if you want.